If I were to ask you which one of the brand new 2024 BMW 5 Series versus the brand new 2024 Mercedes E-Class, which one, if you had to put up your own money, which one would you buy? That's what we're going to explore today. We're going to have a look at both these brand new mid-size sedans from Mercedes and BMW, have a look at some of the spec and tech, have a look, of course, at the design in Photoshop. I'm going to compare the two side by side from a front, side, rear, the interior, and then I'm going to let you know which one I would personally buy if I was in the market for one of these sedans, because I don't love any of them, but I do have a preference one over the other. So more on that later when we jump into Photoshop. But first of all, let's have a look at these articles from Car and Driver for the new i5 and the 5 Series, and then we have the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. So let's start with the 5 Series and let's see what's going on here. The most powerful member of the new 5 Series sedan lineup will be electric, the 590 horsepower i5 M60 xDrive. The gas-powered 530 and 540 models will continue as well. Good job, BMW. So BMW is pretty much electrifying their entire lineup, at least having one version in their entire segment that is fully electric. So the BMW 5 Series is slotting in right there as well. The plan follows the one introduced by the 4 Series and the i4 and the latest 7 Series and the i7, whereby a single platform underpins both gas and battery electric versions. I think that's a good idea. If people want to buy the EV, they can do that, but you don't have to make it into a weird looking design. Just keep the same design as the internal combustion engines and lose 5 miles of range. Who cares? It's going to look a lot better anyway. Overall length is up by 3.9 inches. It's 1.3 inches wider and 1.4 inches taller, and the wheelbase is stretched by 0.8 of an inch to 117.9 inches. So this 5 Series grows pretty substantially. This is probably, I don't know if it's larger now than BMW E38 7 Series, but it's getting up there. So all the cars in BMW's lineup are just keeps on growing. US customers will be able to select from 5 different 5 Series configurations, all of which will have automatic transmissions. Totally fine for me because I do like BMW's automatics these days. They're very snappy and quick. The least expensive will be the 530i, which will get the BMW's familiar 255 horsepower 2-liter turbo 4, and the option of the xDrive, the all-wheel drive. BMW claims a 0 to 60 time in 5.9 seconds for the rear-wheel drive version and 5.8 for the xDrive, which doesn't sound too bad for a base BMW 5 Series. Those 4-cylinders models opens at close to $59,000, and the 530i xDrive goes up to $61,195 and they go on sale this October. At the top of the gas-powered range is the 6-cylinder 540i xDrive. Power comes from a turbocharged 3-liter 6, 375 horsepower, and 398 pound-feet of torque with this 48-volt mild hybrid. According to BMW, this will go 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. I can't wait to see how the new BMW M5 is going to be configured. It's probably most 100% going to have a mild hybrid setup for sure. But the numbers, I believe, are going to be out of this world when the new M5 comes out. I hope they don't mess up the styling too much, though. The electric 5 Series will be called the i5. At the bottom of the EV lineup is the i5 eDrive 40. Rear-wheel drive, 335 horsepower, and around 300 miles. And 0 to 60 in that one is 5.7 seconds. Pricing started $67,795. I would probably myself go with the top of the line gas-powered 540i xDrive in this case. The most powerful i5 is the M60 xDrive. Dual motors, 590 horsepower, and prices start at $85,000. And this has a 3.7 second 0 to 60 time, 143 miles per hour top speed. Range is about 256 miles. Air console video games, they use your smartphone as a controller and the 12.3-inch center display. Sales begin in late September. With that said, let's have a look at the Mercedes-Benz E-Class 2024 model year. It's introduced with the hybrid power with the E350's 4-cylinder and the E450's inline-6 paired to a 23 horsepower electric motor. The cabin can be decked out with a screen in front of the passenger seat and a camera that allows for video calls while stationary. You want to take your office everywhere these days, I guess. Mercedes also integrates several third-party apps into the infotainment system with the central screen, granting access to Zoom, TikTok, and Angry Birds in your Mercedes while you want to go for a drive, you can't get away from TikTok or Angry Birds these days. They're implemented by Mercedes into the car. Is pretty nuts. A futuristic interior can be optioned with 3 screens and a selfie. You have a selfie camera as well in the new Mercedes. The smooth bodywork grows a few inches wider than the outgoing sedan, and Mercedes says the interior space is improved, of course, thanks to the slightly longer wheelbase. Although the 2024 E-Class will come standard with 2 displays, the high-tech interior seen here, down here in this image, shows off an optional 3rd screen, which is right here by the passengers, which results in a large pane of glass stretching across the entire dashboard. Pretty, is it cool? I guess. It's very sterile to me, but you know, technology. An optional package allows the lighting to pulse with the beat of whatever music you're playing. Mercedes is proud of the new entertainment options. The passengers can stream video and games while on the move. And again, this Angry Bird TikTok stuff. Zoom is also available, making use of the optional selfie and video camera that comes with the super screen. You also have augmented reality for navigation, something that I think is really cool when you actually use it. 2 hybridized powertrains will be offered in the United States. The E350 uses a 255 horsepower turbocharged 2-liter, making 295 pound-feet of torque, and the E450 brings a turbo 3-liter inline 6 with 375 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. They're all all-wheel drive, and they're all connected to a 9-speed automatic transmission. You also have rear-wheel steering with the technology package, and you can expect them to go on sale later this year. With that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and let's have a look at what's going on with these designs, because I want to show you what Mercedes and BMW is doing with their designs these days. They feel like Mercedes, they have 2 completely different design philosophies, these 2 cars. You have Mercedes being this very soft and rounded design overall. Look at the greenhouse and compare the greenhouse to the 5 Series here. Very rounded and curvy, maybe even, I would say, organic shape in this design. Front end looks pretty EQ-ish, meaning that we have the black graphic here that connects the headlights into this very curvy, again, organic looking headlight in the front end for the Mercedes. Not sure if I do definitely prefer the previous, I think it was 2 generations back, maybe 1, I'm not entirely sure, the E-Class that had this graceful smile to it and just looked elegant in the front end. This looks too EQ-ish for me, but I do appreciate the Mercedes is trying to go in a new direction, trying to figure out where they want to head with their designs. As always, the wheels here coming in with the Mercedes wheels, they look fantastic. I think they look really cool. Maybe a little too much going on in these spokes. I would maybe remove this piece that sticks out in the very end points of the spoke and just have a multi-spoke black wheel for the Mercedes. We also have this typical upswing here in Mercedes that is pretty much implemented in every single Mercedes front end these days. Now, looking at the BMW, it has a lot sharper design than the Mercedes. It's a totally different philosophy from BMW. In the Mercedes, we have a shoulder line that is cut here, then comes back over the rear axle, creating some muscle over both axles, which is fine since this is an all-wheel drive version. In the BMW, we have one single shoulder line stretching from the top corner of the taillight into this corner of the headlight, and then you have this upswing in the lower section, typical German BMW line. What I don't like about this design in the front end is this black trim piece that BMW is now adding onto a lot of cars. Their X5s, the X3, the 3 Series also has a big black mouth right here. It doesn't stick up as far as it does here in the 5 Series. But other than that, this has the potential to look fantastic if you maybe, you know, do a couple of changes to it, some subtle OEM plus changes. For example, I'm not a huge fan of these wheels. They look too complex to me. The rest of the body, as I said, very sharp and chiseled, and then you have too much going on. We even have these in slots in the spokes themselves, and the angles of the spoke is too complex. I would definitely switch out these wheels and put some really nice, classy wheels onto this design, and I would probably lower it half an inch or maybe even an inch. And I would like to see what this would look like if we have this in body color, which I think the M5 will have all this stuff in body color. At least I hope so. I'm not sure because we have this big mouth in the front end. However, the grille looks fairly traditional BMW. There's no grille sticking down like this, like we have in the 4 Series and the M3. So this looks pretty traditional to me, this grille implementation. And overall, I think it's a pretty decent design. Looking at it from a side view, here you can clearly see the shoulder lines that I'm talking about. Because look at the Mercedes shoulder, stretches right here, right over the rear axle, and then there's nothing going on in this area, but it comes back pretty early, right over the door handle of the front door, and then comes back stretching into the corner of the headlight right there. It looks great. I'm not bashing Mercedes for having this soft design. There's just the graphics in the front, the headlights, the curvatures, connection with the black graphics in the front of the grille, and also we're gonna have a look at the rear end, which also has a very strange implementation of the LEDs. But we also have this lower section in the lower body of the car, typical German again, this specific line, and you can see again just how smooth and curvaceous this design is compared to the BMW. However, the proportions are on point. Stretching this A-pillar further down and continuing it, you can see that it goes straight into the center of the front axle, exactly like we want to have on a German stately looking design. Same goes for the BMW. It also has, have a look at this, stretching the A-pillar further down, it goes straight into the center of the front axle. However, I feel like this distance from the A-pillar where it connects with the body is a little bit longer than the one we have in the Mercedes. I'm not sure, it might be just some optical stuff, but it looks like that is a fairly long hood on the BMW. It might have to do with it being straighter than the Mercedes, but overall, these proportions, I'm glad that BMW didn't go and do something crazy, because this is the 5 Series. It's a very important historical sedan for BMW, so they didn't go crazy and ruin the proportions of this thing. And then you can see this clear cut going in, coming back in the bumper right here, looking very nice. The side view, I think, is the best view for the new BMW 5 Series and the E-Class, because you can't really see the weird graphics that's happening specifically in the front end. But again, I need to change these wheels out because they don't really fit this 5 Series in my personal opinion. We do have some version of the Hofmeister King here with a big trim piece covering up most of it right here, looking interesting. And then of course you have the one single shoulder line that stretches across the entire length of the car, looking beautiful, while in the Mercedes again they're split front and back. Looking at the rear view, and this is where it gets very tricky for me, specifically when we look at the Mercedes, because we have the same curvatures that we have in the front end of the outline of this design. However, the internal pieces here, I'm not sure why they decided to add this star pattern that has zero connection to the framing itself in which it sits within. It doesn't have any connection to it. What I would like to see is just some sort of LEDs that follows the outline for the rest of the framing of the design. I'm not sure exactly how that would look like, but something, you know, to have a connection with the framing itself or the housing for the taillights, have the LEDs follow that line in some way. These just look randomly placed inside of, you know, these housings that are very organic. But other than that, it's a pretty clean rear end. You can see just how bubbly this rear end is compared to the BMW, which has a lot more structure to it. But those are the two design philosophies that we have from both of these brands. They both look good in their own right, and I think it's very interesting to see where Mercedes and BMW is going moving forward with the design language. If they're gonna hammer this in further, the roundness from Mercedes, or if they're gonna change it up. You also have these curvatures right here. I'm not a fan of this on an E-Class. This could work on a C-Class to have this upswing or this bump in this plastic, but in the E-Class is the middle brother. C-Class, E-Class, S-Class, I want to have this be a little more dialed down when it comes to styling, and also remove this angle of the tailpipe and just have them be square like this. Now, looking at the BMW, I do really like this rear end of the new 5 Series. I think it looks really nice. This is actually the i5, but this is by far the best looking i model from BMW to this days, because it looks exactly almost like an M Sport 5 Series, but it is all electric. We can even see that it almost could have some exhaust tips implemented down here at the bottom, and a very clean and chiseled design with this clearly integrated bumper, which is a nice feature because we don't really have clearly indicated bumpers in today's car. You have a very sharp endpoint up top compared to Mercedes, where it's a lot smoother and have this sloping line going from the roof and then have this angle that it angles outwards towards the rear end. While in the BMW it's more straight up, and then we have a clear bumper into the graphics in the bottom. I would definitely want to remove this piece and have this not stick up so far into the bumper and intrude here. I want to lower this rear section, the black piece, to maybe this height, or maybe even have it straight like this and completely remove this black piece altogether and have this be body color. I think that would help this design. The taillights, I do like the taillights as well. Very static, and this is what I'm talking about, having the 5 Series being the middle brother. 3 Series, 5 Series, you have the 7 Series. This is just enough styling with this little curvature that goes up right here in the very end point of the taillight. You can have a little bit of styling in the middle brother, and I think this is just a nice balance between that. And have a look at this sharp line going into the pillar and then connecting, fading right here in this area with the sharp shoulder line. It's just a nice looking rear end. Last but not least, let's have a look at this interior from the new 2024 E-Class. Compare it to the Beamer down here. Let's see what's different. You can see that the fluidness and the organic feeling of the exterior of the E-Class actually comes back pretty hard here in the interior because of this outline, doing some ambient lighting pretty nicely in the Mercedes, having it be subtle enough and not too annoying when you're driving at night. You also have a screen right here which looks decently integrated, I would say, the gauge cluster in the dash, because this is what we get today. We get screens. The question is, how well integrated are these screens into the overall interior? I think Mercedes did a good job here with this area of the interior. I'm not so sure about this whole section, this massive screen with the dual screen, passenger screen, the infotainment screen in the middle, and then you have the center console down here with the storage. However, it does look like, if we look down here, it feels like this is going to be a static piece of the screen. So the climate control settings are always going to be visible at the lower section of the infotainment screen, and that's a good idea. If you're gonna have non-physical buttons, this is what you want to have. I would definitely prefer to have some additional buttons maybe hanging down here or something with the knobs for the climate control settings and stuff like that. But since we don't get that, I'm glad that they kept it static, at least in the same place at all times in the bottom of the infotainment screen. This is a selfie camera that we talked about, so you can have Zoom meetings while you're in the car if you want to take your office with you. Not sure how much more technology I personally want to have in cars these days. It feels like they're becoming more consumer electronics and less automobiles in this case, but that's just, you know, the times we live in, I guess. Looking at the BMW, this interior, I do like this interior as well, because I had the BMW 7 Series, the 760, the new one, for a week, and that had a very similar interior to what we have here with these crystal pieces and the ambient lighting. So if you put on the hazards, these are all gonna blink red, and you can have them be customizable with whatever color you want. I think it's a nice touch, but overall, these crystal pieces everywhere in the interior of the BMW, I would much rather have a bit more of a sporty vibe from the interior of BMWs, because BMW compared to Mercedes has always been the sportier brand, you know, generally. At least that's what I think. You have the wireless charging pads right here, looks like you have 2 of them, and you also have the climate controls being, like in the Mercedes, static down here at the bottom. Steering wheel looks pretty cool with this industrial feel at the very bottom. And I forgot to talk about the steering wheel of the Mercedes. And as you know, I'm a huge fan of Mercedes steering wheels these days. I think they do some of the best looking steering wheels out there. In this case, which interior would I like to sit in and, you know, go for a long drive? Honestly, it's gonna have to be Mercedes, because I just like the integration of the gauge cluster better, and it feels like a cozy interior. This has a very static looking integration of the infotainment screen and the gauge cluster, which also suits, when I think about it, it also suits to have it be more horizontal, vertical, sharp like this, because that's exactly what the exterior is compared to the Mercedes. So, which one of these would I personally buy? If I go for the exterior design, it's pretty simple for me. I would definitely go with the BMW 5 Series. And as I said, just put some new wheels on it, lower it an inch top, and that's about it. Then I would think we have a pretty good looking 2024 BMW 5 Series. Let me know which one you would pick in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.